Very recently, Florida's First District Court of Appeals made a decision that I want to talk to you about today. And I know some of you are wondering why we normally don't cover politics or anything like that here on the channel, but the answer is simple, because this decision is something that might impact you during your next visit to the Sunshine State, even if it's only in a minor way. But our goal here on the channel, as I so often say, is to make sure that you're informed and make sure that you don't find yourself in a position that you don't want to be in. I don't want you caught off guard. So today we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about how it might impact you and how it probably definitely won't impact you, just so that you have all the information that you need. But look, before we dig in, a disclaimer. This topic is one that has a lot of people feeling some kind of way. People have very strong opinions about this topic. It's divisive to say the absolute least and often devolves into a political piss and match. I'm not having any of that here on the channel. We're not doing that. Like I've said, probably ad nauseum at this point, we're here to give you the information that you want and need. And maybe it's not the information that you specifically want and need, but someone else might want or need. So we have a zero tolerance policy for anything in the comment section that doesn't pass the vibe check. So know that and understand that the goal here is to share information. If that's too much for you, I'll see you in the next one. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the information that you're here for. What exactly is going on? What can you expect? And what do you need to know? So like I said, Florida's First District Court of Appeals recently made a decision, and that decision is regarding firearms, more specifically, how you can carry a firearm in a public place. Up until this point, Florida had a ban on something called open carry, which for those of you who aren't already aware, just means you are in possession of a firearm and other people can see it. So anyway, Florida's First District Court of Appeals made the decision to invalidate the ban on open carry, which means that individuals in the state of Florida will now be allowed to possess a firearm in the open. Now, it's important to note that as of the date of recording this has not gone into effect. It goes into effect September 25th, though there are some counties here in Florida that have already said that they won't be enforcing the ban on open carry. So if you happen to be here before that time and you see something like this in certain areas, know that there's a little bit of gray area depending on the sheriff that's in charge of whatever county. Now, this change, this update in policy, is going to mean something a little bit different depending on who you are. If you are a gun owner and you are visiting the state of Florida, this is now an option that is available to you, though it's important to realize that there are still rules and restrictions in place, and it's really important to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row before you go this route. Now, if you're not a gun owner, or even if you are and you visit Florida all the time but choose not to travel with your firearm, it means that you may find yourself encountering someone who is open carrying in a public place, which isn't something that you've experienced before in this state. And depending on who you are and where you're from, this is something that you might not have encountered in your home state either. And that's actually why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I know that there are a lot of people from a lot of places that don't encounter this type of thing very regularly, and that can be intimidating, quite frankly, maybe even a little scary. So if this is something that has you going, I don't know how I feel about that, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who feel that way. But sometimes when you feel like that, things can get blown out of proportion. I guess that's the best way to say it. So let's talk about some things that I think you need to know, just so that, again, you can have the information that you want and need. So first things first, let's squash something that I haven't heard anyone talk about yet, but who knows? It's the internet, so I'm sure that they probably will. This change does not mean that Florida is moving towards a more lawless, Wild West type environment. There are still requirements when it comes to owning a firearm in the state of Florida, just like in any other state. There are also still limitations on where you can carry a firearm. It's a long list, as you can see here, but the list isn't just limited to these places. There are also limitations when it comes to private businesses and private property. In fact, you know who could explain this a little bit better than I could?
Hello everyone, Sheriff Grady Judd here. Any private business, any private residence, you can be restricted from carrying your firearm openly or concealed there. Here's what happens. If you go to a private business or to someone's residence and you're asked not to carry the firearm, you have to leave with it. If you stay there, then you're committing armed trespass, which is a felony.
Now, for the sake of clarity and making sure that there's no room for confusion, this doesn't mean that policies at places like Walt Disney World, Universal, SeaWorld, wherever else are going to change in any way. Their policies regarding firearms, weapons, and other banned items are still those policies. Allowing open carry in the state of Florida is not going to change that. So rest assured, it's not going to be people wandering down Main Street USA with their firearms exposed. It's not permitted at Walt Disney World. It wasn't before, and it's not going to be permitted now. And again, same is true for Universal and other similar places. Now, the last thing that I want to touch on today is just re-emphasizing that all this is an additional option for gun owners when it comes to carrying their firearms in public places, of course, with those limitations that we talked about already. And it's not a requirement. It's just an additional option. So many people will choose to continue to carry their firearms concealed and out of sight, which is something that here in the United States is allowed nationwide. And look, I say this knowing that it's not going to make some of you, especially those of you who feel uncomfortable with this change, feel any better. But facts are facts, right? And the facts are that in every one of the 50 states, there's a good chance that you're encountering someone in public with a firearm. You just don't know it. With that being said, is this really going to impact your visit to Florida? Not necessarily. I mean, like I said, this is an option, but it's not a requirement. So while you might see someone's firearm on their hip, for example, in public, you're not necessarily going to. But again, I wanted to talk to you about this so that if you do encounter this, you don't freak out thinking that something is completely wrong. It's not. It's just a rule has changed, and now you know about it. But all right, I think that's all I got for you today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I appreciate you listening to everything that I had to say and informing yourself about this change that's happening here in the state of Florida. Again, I just want to make sure that you're informed and not caught off guard, so I hope that you have that info that you need now. But yeah, until next time, have a great rest of your day. Bye.